Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes.
And I'm Kevin Graham.
And today we're welcomed by Ian McCallum. Ian, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
It's great to have you eventually. I've been aware of your work for some time, so it's taken a wee while to get you onto A Celtic State of Mind. What would be your earliest memory as a Celtic fan?
First of all, I should say I actually have a terrible memory, but curiously enough, my first time at a Celtic game, the event is quite clear in my mind. In that, I was probably about 5 or 6 and I was being dragged into town by my mother shopping and throwing a tantrum at the bus stop. And my uncle James, who was a great Celtic supporter, was passing and volunteered to take me to the Celtic. And rather than go into the shops, I merrily went off with Uncle James to the football.
What a stroke of luck.
Well, and I remember that, as I say, the event. We got down to Celtic Park and he threw me over a turnstile and then took me down to the wall at the Celtic end and stood me in 2 beer cans to see over the wall. And that's pretty much all I remember of it. It then became quite a regular event, this choice between going to Celtic Park or going into Sauchiehall Street to do the shopping. So there's really no choice.
Well, see, as a memory though, you're talking about going down there, the beer cans. Sometimes it is the smells and the things that happened on the terracing that you remember, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I was that interested in the football at 5 or 6, but the atmosphere and what was going on in the crowd. And there's a couple of things I do remember. In fact, I was talking to Big Yogi, John Hughes, who is actually my favourite player of the time, would you believe? And one of the memories that does stick in my mind was a particular game. Don't ask me who against. But it was a terrible day. I was on my beer cans as normal. Yogi got the ball at the halfway line, beat 3 or 4 players, took it round the goalkeeper and slotted it into the net, so he thought, and went charging back up the park, giving it the fist pump. And then the ball came sailing over his head, obviously still in play. And what had happened is the ball had trundled onto the goal line and then stopped. And the goalkeeper picked it up and booted it up the park. And the look in Big John's face has remained with me ever since. So that was certainly a memory. But I couldn't tell what game it was. Yeah. But probably by the time I was 9 or 10, I would be going myself, or going with my pals. Mm-hmm. And then I would be taking an interest in the football.
You mentioned John Hughes there. Was this pre-Steen or just after Steen had come in?
That would be pre-Steen, yeah, pre-Steen. Mm-hmm. If I was 5 or 6, 7 maybe, you're talking 61, 62. I always had a great affinity for Big John Hughes. I thought he was a much underrated player. You know, he really was a superb player, I thought. Mm-hmm. For a man his size, his ball control was superb. In fact, I preferred him to Jimmy Johnson, perfectly honest.
See, when you think back to the 1970 European Cup final, there's a moment when Yogi breaks. It's a big swashbuckling run. And he goes one-on-one with the goalie. And he misses that opportunity. Now, that must have been a massive regret for him. But I think in that one moment, you've seen the ability that John Hughes had. He grabbed that ball from the centre circle almost. And there was a break, wasn't there? And the guys were bouncing off him almost.
Listen, he used to do that regularly. But probably too often for Jock Steen's liking. Mm-hmm. He fuffed the end of it. I mean, but he really was superb, absolutely superb. I think I'm right in saying he's probably about the 6th or 7th, maybe the 8th top goal scorer in the history of Celtic.
Yeah,
which is astonishing.
Mm-hmm. And he scored a lot of the goals kind of early in his career as well, didn't he?
I think he actually came into his career in the kind of middle time he was there with Celtic. He was probably there with Celtic probably about maybe 60, 61, right up to about 71. There was always something about Big John. He never seemed to fit in. It didn't seem to matter how well he did or how badly he did. He never seemed to be in with the in crowd, I think. And I think him being left out for the 67 Cup final hurt him. And I don't think he got anything like the slack that Jimmy Johnstone got. Mm-hmm. Jimmy was a wee cheeky chappy and better, and on his game he was unplayable. Whereas Big John had to work for the gratitude, if you follow me.
Yeah.
But he was certainly my favourite.
What's your favourite game growing up then?
Probably the cup final against Dunfermline. That's the one that I have a really good memory of. And Big Billy scoring the winning goal. And believe it or not, a couple of years later, I actually come across a press photograph of him up in mid-air, actually heading the ball. And the press photographer must have been right behind the goal. Mm-hmm. And it was my prized possession for, must have been 20 years. And somehow or other it went missing. I don't know how. The wife probably threw it out in one of her mad cleaning up frenzies that she goes into now and again. But I was heartbroken at losing it. That was probably one that sticks in my mind.
What I loved, you always find out new information. You think you know a lot about a subject, Ian, but then you talk to someone and they'll give you a wee snippet. And what I loved was the wee ball boy that ran and kicked the ball back at the net was Andy Lynch.
Right.
So Big Billy scores a goal and the wee guy, you see him, and he kicks the ball back at the net. That's Andy. And obviously in 1977 he took the penalty in that same goal to win Celtic the Scottish Cup. Yep. It's incredible how these things work out.
It's amazing, especially around about Celtic.
Well, this is it. In the last few weeks.
And that's what I was going to say, it continues right up to now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying that last night. When you look at the honours of Billy McNeill, 1 European Cup, 9 league titles, 6 League Cups, 7 Scottish Cups, 1967, and then the first game after he passes away with 67 minutes on the clock, number 5 scores. The quote is, there's a fairy tale about this club.
Well, that's just another paragraph added to it, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Now, you obviously seen the best of times. You've seen the best of times as a Celtic supporter, and you've seen the winning of the European Cup. What's your memories of that, Ian?
And I was actually very lucky to see the cup final because I was locked in my room, would you believe? I'd been caught dogging the school a couple of days earlier. Dogging in them days means different from what it means now.
Thanks for clarifying that.
I hasten to add. But when you were plonking off of school, when you were illegally off of school, it used to be called dogging the school. So I'd been caught dogging the school and I was being kept in, as it used to be termed. And my parents relented at the very last minute and let me out to watch the game on the TV. And as soon as the game was finished, I was put back in. Though to be fair, again, they let me out about 2 hours later because I was born and bred in Blackhill, and the Blackhill Tims organised a march with the accordion band and the banners, and they were going round and round Blackhill. So I was allowed out the room to stand at the top of the stairs and watch the parade. I wasn't allowed to join in. They weren't going to go that far, but my memory of that is being in semi-detention.
And obviously with the events of the last few weeks, the sad events, Ian, what does Billy McNeill mean to you as a figure at Celtic Football Club?
I've spoken often, certainly the last few years, about how Celtic conduct themselves. And Billy McNeill, to me, was the epitome of Celtic. He realised that he was representing something more than a football club. And he conducted himself accordingly. And he made you proud to be Glasgow Irish. Stevie Chalmers, I have a bit of affinity to as well. Not only was he a tremendous footballer, Stevie he was a Garngad boy. And my people are from Garngad. And he played football for St Roch's, which was my old school that I played football for. So Stevie, I always had a soft spot for Stevie as well.
You've spoken there about the Glasgow Irish. That takes us on nicely to a huge project that you've undertaken, which, when it's finished, will be a chronicle of Celtic history. Could you tell us about how your mind came around to the subject matter? When did you decide to engulf yourself in this incredible project? Because, I mean, this is, I'm talking years and years of your life that you've poured into this. Tell us a wee bit about this.
Well, first of all, I went completely mad.
Before you wrote the books?
I went completely mad and then came up with this thought that I would write 6 Celtic books. What actually happened, believe it or not, it was I'm sure you remember, the poppy demonstration at Celtic Park with the Green Brigade.
Yeah.
And I'd been sitting next to this particular chap for years in the North Stand, and through the poppy demonstration we get talking about politics and football. And I personally don't believe there should be any politics in football at all. But his level of ignorance astonished me, you know. I mean, he stood beside me for years and he sang the songs. But when you actually get down to it, he didn't know. And he certainly didn't know about the Celtic team that was forced to play in horrendous personal circumstances throughout the period of the Great War. And that's when the idea sprung to mind. I tried to do some research and discovered there was very, very little about it. Other Celtic historians kind of skimmed over it. Mm-hmm. Mainly, I think, because of the complications of the Great War. And I think it took a military mind to understand the background that was going on, in which this absolutely superb football team had to play under. I mean, we talk about the Lisbon Lions. The period 1905 to 1917 was an absolutely glorious period in the history of Celtic Football Club. And we would never see the likes again until the Lisbon Lions. And so that's how. I mean, some statistics for you. Between 1905 and 1917, Celtic won 10 league championships, 5 Scottish Cups, 8 Charity Cups, and 9 Glasgow FA Cups, including the Budapest Cup, where they beat the English champions. And before you think that the Glasgow Charity Cup and the Glasgow FA Cup were small competitions, in the 1914 Glasgow FA Cup, there was 100,000 at Hampden Park. So that's the scale of it. And the Charity Cup, bearing in mind the Celtic's foundation. The Charity Cup was always a very important trophy to Celtic. Mm-hmm. You know, they really enjoyed winning the Charity Cup. So it was a period that had been ignored for perfectly understandable reasons. And I thought, I'll put some meat on the bones here. And that was basically the concept.
We're now 2019, and where are you with the project?
The 4th book has just been written. In fact, it goes to the typesetters next week. So that'll be 4 down, 2 to go, as long as I live so long.
But what I do like about them, and I've discussed this with various other people, is that you've written these books, you've published them, you've sourced the printer, you've done every single thing that's involved in writing a book. Then in terms of promoting that book, selling that book, distributing it, you've done everything from start to finish, haven't you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge undertaking, Ian.
I'm just a control freak. I go back to the point of it. I had this brain seizure. I'm actually start raving mad. But distribution is kind of key, and it's very difficult. There's so few bookshops now, and there's so many Celtic books, as you know. So the Celtic fan who goes out there, he's got a massive choice of books to pick from. Mm-hmm. You know? But I enjoy the research, enjoy the writing, but I don't really enjoy the distribution.
Yeah, it's a difficult part that you would hope you could hand that over to a publisher and they would just deal with that, Ian. But as you say, I think in this game you need to have that level of control to ensure that it's done right.
That's right. And everybody demands their pound of flesh. Mm-hmm. Again, as you know yourself, you put a book into Waterson's and they want minimum 50%. So whatever the book is going to sell for, they take 50%. Mm-hmm. You've got the printing costs, there's another 20%. No, I must admit, I've been very fortunate with my printers. They're printed in Poland and they're outstanding quality. Yeah. You know, and you get 10 times more for your money over there than you do here, which is a pity. You'd like to support, you know, Scottish or British printers, but for the price of a very thin paperback, I get a hardback, gold lettering, green end papers, a white hardcover, there's green, white and gold, colour dust jacket, all for the price of a paperback here.
Oh, it's incredible. But you've had to do the work to source that.
Got to do it, that's right. Got to do it.
You said the period of the Great War, the Celtic, was probably not investigated for because it was a difficult subject. What were the difficulties?
I think it was because there was so many outside influences affecting football. Outbreak of the Great War itself, and certainly the first 3 or 4 months, was absolutely catastrophic. It's difficult to explain what was going on. And of course, football doesn't exist in a bubble. The first book, The Gathering Storms, actually shouldn't have been written. But when I was doing the first book, which was going to be The Storms Breaks, if you will, which is now the second book, I found I was having to explain so much that what was going to be the first book would have ended up about 800 pages because it was just so complicated. Because what I'm trying to put across is not only the Celtic story, but the story of the Glasgow Irish, i.e. the Celtic support, if you will. And I think other authors or other researchers looking at these complications, and as I said, all these outside influences, just thought, this is too I don't understand, she's going to take too much. Just to give you an example, over the difference between 13-14 season and 14-15, when obviously the war had started. War started in August 1914. The Celtic home gate fell 90,000, and they were, for the most part, away to the army. And the point I would note is, this is voluntarily away to the army. Conscription didn't come in fully until the middle of 1916. So all of a sudden, 90,000 fewer at Parkhead. And that was replicated throughout the whole of Scottish football. There would have been no football at all had it not been for Tom White of Celtic. I don't know if you're aware of the First World War period. Professional football in England stopped, whereas it carried on in Scotland. And that was largely due to Tom White. What had happened was there was a massive public campaign to have professional football stopped. And the FA decided they'd just carry on as normal, despite the advice of the SFA. And Tom White was the vice chairman at the time. And it ended up, the SFA issued a statement, we're just going to carry on as normal. Tom White wasn't happy with that. He went straight to the War Office and asked them, do you want professional football to stop? And the War Office says, no, but you'll need to throw public opinion a bone. And Tom White came up with cancelling the Scottish Cup and cancelling full internationals. When we went back up the road, the league decided, mostly because of all these missing supporters, that professional football's wages would be cut to £1. They'd only be able to play on a Saturday or a holiday, and they had to take a job outside football, preferably in a war-related industry. So you ended up with this myth that Celtic and Willie Maley got all these players put into safe jobs, which is a myth, in that it was the Scottish League, if MD, who made them do it. But at the time, there was plenty of jobs. You didn't need to be led into a job. Again, a couple of statistics. In one day in September 1914, 1,000 men walked off the job in Fairfield shipyards and joined the army. A chap called Dalrymple, who was the Glasgow Tramways manager, left a message one night when he left his work to be sent round all the tramway depots. MD fancy joining a tramways battalion. The next morning, there was 1,200 men at Copelaw Hill tram depot, and they became the 15th Battalion, the Highland Light Infantry. So there was astonishing things happening, absolutely astonishing. But the pressure on footballers and football was incredible. Players were being sent white feathers, supposedly cowardice. There was a campaign run by the Glasgow Evening Times to start a Celtic battalion. The Jimmy Quinn Quickfirers, Rangers as well. Rangers were under a lot of pressure. They were looking for an old firm battalion. You had to lead, the captain had to lead 1,200 supporters into the army. And this was what they were operating in. So it was strange times, and these footballers who'd just taken a massive cut in their wages. So if you were on £6 a week at Celtic, all of a sudden you're down to £1 a week. and you found yourself back in your old job. You know, and Celtic's players were for the most part miners and shipyard workers. Patsy Gallagher was a carpenter. John McMaster was an electrician. Sonny Jim Young was a turner. You know, so they all went back to their old employer and then had to turn up on Saturday and play a professional game.
Yeah.
So it was incredible circumstances that they worked in.
At Celtic Park, you spoke about the ignorance of that certain individual, obviously over the Poppy furore. When you started researching the period, Ian, was there any other myths? You spoke about a myth there. Was there anything else that you unearthed and were able to confirm?
One that really irritated me, and it irritates me still because I can't actually get this finally dispelled. And that's in fact, you may remember it because there was a campaign in 2014 for Celtic to surrender the 14-15 championship to Hearts. And that is really, in fact, it's a very sad story because it was a group of very, very talented young Hearts players. I always hesitate to say the word coerced, but it's very difficult not to. But these young Hearts players were enticed, shall we say, to join the army. Again, as this example, I was saying about the Celtic Jimmy Quinn Quickfirers, we can get the players to enlist, the supporters will follow them.
Yeah.
And this is what happened at Hearts. There was a chap called McRae, Sir George McRae, who was an illuminary at Hearts, ex-director, ex-treasurer, multi-millionaire. And he used his influence to, let's say, persuade this young Hearts team to enlist into his battalion, his own personal battalion. So it was a publicity stunt that got these young players in. And in fact, when I say the Hearts team, it was actually about 6 of the Hearts first team, and the rest were made up of reserves. And they all duly joined McRae's battalion. Very famous battalion in Scottish military history, and almost saintly through in Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
The Hearts supporters all probably get death threats because of this story. And what actually happened was they joined the army, and McRae's battalion was trained in Edinburgh. So they never actually left Edinburgh, and they never actually missed a single Hearts game throughout the whole of the season. And then there was the argument, well, it's military training. Had they been left to football training, they would have done better. But the point I would make against that is, well, the Hearts players were in the army and doing the army training, which certainly in some respects to do with footballers. Infantry training in those days concentrated on lower body, so they're building up their leg muscles. You would think that would be good for a footballer. Meanwhile, all the Celtic players have went back to their jobs. So you've got the likes of Peter Johnstone down in an Edwardian mine, working 12 hours a day. And I would argue that Edwardian industry is every bit as hard or as tiring as military training. But nobody ever wants to take up the story. There's a nonsense, an absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Celtic won that championship by sheer consistency. And Hearts basically did what they're famous for, and they kind of followed the final hurdle for whatever reason. And that's exactly what happened.
You do the research, you put in the hours, Ian, and you come up with an alternative to that view. What kind of reaction did you get?
It was basically ignored by everybody. I don't think anybody wanted to touch it. There's a part in the John Wayne film, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. I don't know if you remember it, but they're interviewing the old congressman about Liberty Valance and the guy who killed him. And when the congressman tells the reporter the true story, which was not the myth, then the reporter tore up his notes and says, when it comes to the choice of printing the truth or printing the myth, always print the myth. And I think that's the situation with Hearts. It's a fabulous story. It's a sad story of those 6. And they were an immensely talented team. The Hearts manager, John McCartney, had them really tip-top. They were going for it. They took Celtic to the last, I think it was second last game before Celtic actually put them away. And as I said, a lot of it was self-inflicted, But out of those 6 young players, I think there was 4 killed in the Somme. 1 was killed at Battle of Loos. Another one was so badly injured that he never played football again. So it's a sad story, And I don't want to plug it too much. But on the other hand, the truth's the truth.
It needs to be covered. It needs to
That's
be,
right.
It needs to be documented.
Well, it is documented. It says there in black and white.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a very nice email from David Potter who commented on it. He says, "Thank God somebody's finally put this one to bed." I mean, I systematically dismantled the argument, and there's no doubt about it. Coerce is probably the wrong word to use for what happened with recruiting between August 14 and June 1916, because it was all voluntary. You were obviously getting different kinds of pressures. I mentioned these white feathers and things. But again, to quote you some figures, as a kind of son of the Garngad, I was particularly interested in the Garngad, and I picked out a family, the Hillies. Hugh Hilly went on to play for Celtic. Jimmy McGrory was almost adopted by the Hillies. And at the start of the war, of 4 Hilly sons, 3 of them volunteered to join and eventually went into the army and went through the war. I won't spoil the last of it because something pretty spectacular happens to one of them in the next book, so I won't spoil it for you. But Hugh Hilly, who went on to play for Celtic, he lied to join the army, lied about his age. And believe it or not, he joined the 18th Battalion, Highland Light Infantry. And the commanding officer of the 18th Battalion, Highland Light Infantry, was Lieutenant Colonel John Shaughnessy, director of Celtic. Something like 30% of the battalion, they reckoned, was Roman Catholic and Celtic supporters. What actually happened to Colonel Shaughnessy, he was removed from his post after raising the battalion, you call it. So he raised it. He did all the recruiting and got the people in and trained them. And then at the end of it, he was removed. And the Lord Provost of Glasgow kicked up absolute stink about it. But again, they didn't understand the military. What was happening was Colonel Shaughnessy himself had no battle experience. And by that time, there was officers coming online who did have battle experience. And it was happening all over the place. It wasn't just happening to John Shaughnessy. In fact, John Shaughnessy was offered another battalion and instead took, through ill health, John Shaughnessy became the recruiting officer for Glasgow. So this whole recruiting thing became an enormous thing. Because it was voluntary, it became an enormous thing. But football itself was singled out almost. I think the thinking behind it was such a working class sports then. And they realised if there's 35,000 sitting or standing at Ibrox or Parkhead or Fir Park, then they should be in the army as opposed to standing watching football. Yeah. And that put this particular pressure on football. But Celtic and Rangers, to a slightly lesser degree, went through the whole war with this thing round their neck about not contributing players to the army. And you still hear it today. It's a myth that's regurgitated today. In fact, it's very, very unfair on both clubs. I say it was nothing to do with the clubs. It was the Scottish League that made them take up the work. And then, of course, when you're in a job like that, which is munitions related, you used to call it the munitions industry. Well, if you're a ship's carpenter, you're a vital worker because German U-boats are sinking British ships and you need more ships. Or the ships operate in coal-fired boilers, so you need the miners. And that was how it happened.
Yeah, these industries had to continue. So that was another aspect of it. Now, the hours and the years that you've put into this, Ian, it was sparked off and it was motivated by the ignorance of an individual. Has this made a difference to him? Have you ever discussed it with the guy you're talking about in the North Stand at Celtic Park? For guys like myself and various others who are really interested in the Celtic history, this is something that, like David Potter's said to you, you finally bridged that gap. What's the reaction been like from Celtic fans and people with an interest in history?
Well, the sale of the books has been great, and thanks to very careful research and some very careful proofreading by Jamie Foxx, nobody's ever came to me and said, "You made a mistake there. That is wrong." So a lot of the time goes into checking and rechecking the facts. If I say Celtic beat Partick Thistle 3-0 at Firhill, then Celtic better have beaten Partick Thistle 3-0 at Firhill.
Yeah.
The time taken is whatever needs to be put in. There's been quite a gap between the third book and the fourth book. This fourth book is particularly poignant and particularly kind of detailed in that like Peter Johnstone's killed,
right?
Which was a massive event in Celtic and in Scottish football in general. Mm-hmm. And Peter Johnstone was probably the most high-profile, talented Scottish footballer, certainly. I would argue British footballer killed during the war. And his death sent a shockwave through the whole of Glasgow. It says in the papers at the time that the city of Glasgow went silent. You know, I mean, you imagine some top Celtic player from today, and that happening. You know, it's just, and he was one of 8 Celtic players, former Celtic players, killed during the war. A couple of directors lost sons. Tom Maley, one of the fathers of Celtic, he lost a son. Jimmy Kelly lost a boy. So this was the atmosphere that this spectacular Celtic team had to play in. Mm-hmm. We celebrated last year the boys breaking the 62 unbeaten. Well, that was their record. And in fact, they didn't quite make it because it was 62 league games. This team of 1914-15 actually made it 69 if you count all competitions.
Yeah. Some of these competitions that have been lost to the depths of time. And
that's right. And their achievement has got to be looked in the whole, in that I think, although there was a very obvious gap between Celtic and Rangers and the rest financially, not as big as today. It was a 20-team league back in those days. Rangers had a very talented team. St Mirren, Morton, they were all challenging for large parts of the season.
Yeah.
Kilmarnock, the record, curiously enough, began with beating Kilmarnock 2-0 and ended by Kilmarnock beating Celtic 2-0 62 games later. So it's another one of these funny things in football. But it was a glorious era, and they were a glorious side. The football they played was outstanding. And if you think of the players in that squad, Patsy Gallagher, Jimmy McMenemy, a historian, Pat Woods. I think Pat would be hard pushed to argue the point that Jimmy McMenemy was probably Celtic's greatest ever player. Sonny Jim Young. These people are lost legends.
Yeah.
Though again, David Potter in his books brought back certainly like Sonny Jim Young. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Charlie Shaw, the goalkeeper. What was the statistic for Charlie? Charlie Shaw, the goalkeeper. 421 appearances, 224 shutouts.
That's incredible.
That's just
over that period of time, that's...
And again, it's not all down to Charlie. It's obviously down to having a very good defence.
Yep.
I mean, Eck McNair was at Celtic for about 25 years.
The Icicle.
The Icicle.
Yeah.
That's right.
They always had great nicknames, didn't they?
Yeah.
The Icicle. They all had fantastic... It was like superhero nicknames, the Icicle, you know.
Sniper McCallum.
No, it's brilliant. I've only got one final question for you, Ian. We could talk all day. Is you've just finished book number 4, as have I. I've just finished book number 4. When
is this some kind of competition? Is it?
Yeah. Who's this going to come out first?
Well,
no. How can we get it? When's that going to be released?
Hopefully end of June, beginning of July, thereabouts.
Will we still be able to get it in the Celtic shops, or is it are you sticking on to the online sales?
No, well, Celtic gets the offer of it. Watersons are kind of contracted to take so many.
Right.
As you know, the online sales is what you get your return on. Mm-hmm. And whereas I don't see myself as a JK Rowling, I'd like the book to pay for itself.
Yeah.
You know, which is what this is all about, is putting information out there, and good information. There's too much misinformation
There is.
But if you can get good information out there, then that's what it's all about.
It's bridging a very important gap in the history of Celtic Football Club, and for that we should all be thankful. So, Ian, thank you very much for coming along and speaking to Celtic State of Mind and telling us your Celtic story.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Excellent,
Ian.
thank you. A Celtic State of Mind can be found at axom.net. We're sponsored by Fansbet, the betting company by fans for fans.